What's up guys? In today's video we're going to be talking about constructors, and we're going to take a look at some class writing practice and ways that you can write classes and use methods to solve whatever that class wants to do. So the constructor. Up until this point we've been working with different methods, and we've been seeing how those methods can work together. But it's really important to use constructors within your class. So a constructor is basically a method, and one thing that you want to note, and one way you can distinguish constructors from other methods, is that the constructor will have the same exact name as the class. And if you think of methods having different parameters, you should also think of classes having different parameters, and those parameters being those instance variables that you create. And we talked about instance variables in the previous video. And basically what a constructor allows you to do is to initialize those class variables and pass values to them when you create a class object. And so we've been creating class objects up until this point, and we've been calling them test cases, and we looked at them a little bit. But we're going to get a little bit more in depth with test cases and creating objects with parameters. And one thing to note, when you're creating an object or a test case, that will automatically call the constructor, because as you know, when writing a test case, the format of a test case would be your class name with your object name and then new class and then your empty parameters. Well, now we're going to be adding parameters into that, and we're going to be taking a look at an example that's going to incorporate all of this right now. So what I did here is I created two classes, and one is called learn.java and the other one is learnmain.java. And what the learnmain.java is going to have is it's going to have the main method that we're going to be able to access our different class from using objects that can talk to each other. And so what we can do right now is just quickly write the class learn with our opening and closing braces, and we have our public class. And here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to get a program, or we're going to write a program that's going to actually, before I explain anything, let's just write out our instance variables, and that will do more explaining than I can. So we're going to create 3 string instance variables, and we're going to call our first one student name. And actually, before we create the other ones, I just want to give you a look at how constructors work. So we create our default constructor, and what a default constructor does is it doesn't take any parameters, and it's what will get automatically called when you create a new object. So if you don't have a default constructor, one thing to note is that Java will basically make one for you. But we're just going to make one here and specify it with our opening and closing parentheses, and that's our constructor. Now we're going to create another constructor that says, and this is called Initialization Constructor, and here's where we can specify a parameter. And one thing to note about these constructors is that they don't take any data types, so they will always be public followed by your class name followed by whatever parentheses you specify. And now we're going to quickly write a method that says public set name. Whoops, forgot the data type. It's going to be a void data type because it's not going to return anything. One thing about constructors, you don't have to specify the void key, but you will not have to return anything from your constructor. And we'll just say student name equals name. Always remember, instance variables go first when in your set methods. And then we're going to create a string method called actually, we'll just write a toString method that basically just says return hello, and we can use our escape sequence of \n plus student name, and that's good. Here, for our default constructor, we just want to set student name equal to an empty string. If it was int, we would just say 0. And I'll show you how the logic of this works in a minute. And in our main class here, we're just going to specify an object or a test case. And we're just going to access the class that we're using, which in this case is learn, even though we're in the learn main Java class. The learn main Java class is basically our class that has our main method in it. And we can access different classes from our main method. And we can just say learn, and we can just say object1 is equal to new learn. Again, with objects, you have to specify the new key with its opening and closing parentheses. So what we did is we created an object that is of the instance learn, and we set empty parameters. And what this is going to do is it's going to access this constructor, or this default constructor that we created. If we go ahead here into our learn method and we just copy and paste what we put for set name and just copy and paste that into there and specified the name John, we wouldn't get an error message, because what this is doing is this test case, or this object when we create it with our parentheses, is accessing this constructor that we created. So if we get rid of this default constructor and we go ahead and delete this, we should get an error message because we don't have that default constructor that we created, and the constructor that we did create takes a parameter, so we have to specify that here, which in this case can be John. And that way we don't even have to say something like object1 dot this set name method that we used, where we set name from there. It's cool in Java using constructors. When you create an object, you can specify parameters that will set values to your instance variables. So what we can do here is just access our toString method that we created, and then we can go ahead and write a print statement behind it. System.out.println. And if we go ahead and run this, you'll see that it says hello John. We can again change the parameters to Matilda. Change it to Matilda. And it says hello Matilda. Okay. And that should give you a solid understanding of kind of something that constructors can do. And we're just going to go ahead and delete this right here. And we're going to delete this, and we're going to delete this. What we're going to do is we're going to create a couple more instance variables. And we're going to create a private string, and we're going to call this student major. And then we're going to create another one that's just going to say student color. Or I guess instead of student color, we can say favorite color. And what we're going to do is we're going to create different constructors that are going to check for which parameters are there. So we're going to first create our default constructor, and that would be public learn. And what we would usually do is we would do something like this in our default constructor. We would do student name is equal to just quotes, because these are just our default values that we're setting to them. And if it was the case of an int, we would say like int student name is equal to 0. But instead of doing that, what we can do is we can just say, use the this key and say quotes, quotes, quotes. And that should assign 3 values to these instance variables that we created. The second constructor, and actually I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because for the sake of time and typing, we're going to create another constructor. In this case, it's going to be an initialization constructor, and we're just going to specify the parameter name. And here we're just going to say name. We're going to do it again, but we're going to specify string name again, and string major. Change this to name and major. And the reason why we have to do this is because when we create our objects, we don't necessarily know that all these parameters are going to be passed in. So we'll take a better look at that in a minute, but I'm just going to specify this third parameter that's going to say string color. And again, instead of saying this, and you should be getting errors here, and I'll explain why, but what we can do is instead of just saying this, we can say set a method called setProperty, or setProperties, and use name, major, and color. And it's giving us an error message, obviously, because we did not specify that method. And here we can say name, major, and color. Go ahead and copy these. And that's good like that. Whoops. So we also want to look at the two methods that we have. And this is kind of important to understand, but the two methods that we usually like to create when working with constructors are called accessor methods and mutator methods. Mutator methods are methods that we typically use things like set with, and they allow you to alter the value of those variables. And we also have accessor methods that usually we like to use the words get with that will return the value of that variable. So in our set properties methods, which is also a mutator method, we can say student name is equal to name, student major is equal to major, and favorite color is equal to color. And we're not actually going to use a accessor method because we're actually going to use a toString method. And we don't need to specify any parameters, and we can just specify a return statement because it's a string method, or otherwise it will give us an error. And we can say something like hello, and then we can put name plus you are studying plus our major, and quotes that say and your favorite color is plus color. Except obviously we're accessing our instance variables, and student name. Okay. And now what we can do is we can actually go and create these objects. And so we can say learn object 1 is equal to new learn. And because we created a default constructor, that is that's okay when we specify it, but obviously when we go and call this toString method that we created, system.out.println, and print that, obviously when we run it, it's not going to print our instance variables. It basically says hello, and then you are studying and your favorite, all that, without the variables. And that's because we have this constructor that assigns student name, major, and color when there are no parameters that are specified to just those blank string values. And the important thing that you want to do is you want to create different constructors for every outcome that can happen. So this constructor allows us to create or initialize default values for these instance variables when there are no parameters set. This constructor allows us to set only this name string that is passed in, and we assume that it is a name. If it's not, that's too bad. We made it so that it'll assign it to the student name instance variable. But that's only if one parameter is passed. This is for 2 parameters, and this is for 3. However, when we have a default constructor, this will create these values for these strings, and thus we'll be able to read into this method with its 3 parameters, and then therefore going to the setProperties methods where these instance variables are initialized. And what we're going to do is we're just going to specify those parameters right now. And so we can put our name as Joseph, major as computer science, and his favorite color at blue. And if we go ahead and run this, we see that it says, "Hello Joseph, you are studying computer science and your favorite color is blue." The spacing is messed up because I didn't use quotes to space things out, but that's not the point. If we got rid of this blue parameter and ran it again, it would say, "Hello Joseph, you are studying computer science and your favorite color is," and then doesn't give us a color because it's a blank parameter that's not passed, and it automatically initializes this favorite color instance variable to quotes. Again, what we can do is we can set more than one object, so we don't have to have one object. We can have multiple objects that we're working with, and we can have as many as we want, and we can constantly call those objects as our program runs. And so we can say Cindy and molecular biology, and her favorite color is green. Just one really quick thing to understand is that if we just specify the parameters Cindy and green, your program wouldn't be able to understand that that green string is going to be automatically initialized as a color. It's going to automatically set green because it's the second parameter that's specified. Even if it's not intending to, it's going to set it to this student major. So the student major initial instance variable would have the value green. So you want to keep that in mind. And then we can create another one. Actually, we don't need to, just for time. And if we go ahead and copy this and paste it, and change this to 2, and we go ahead and run this, it says, "Hello Joseph, you are studying computer science and your favorite color is," we didn't specify. "Hello Cindy, you are studying molecular biology and your favorite color is green." So that's kind of a quick look at how constructors work. Today we talked about constructors and default constructors and different constructors that you can make depending on the different parameters that you can pass through. And we also talked about accessor and mutator methods and what those are comprised of. I hope you enjoyed this video. We're going to be working on these types of problems a lot more in class writing, but I hope that your class writing skills are up to par with this video. In future videos, we're going to be talking about more class writing stuff, and I hope to see you then. Thank you.